Board games are getting more and more expensive. Materials, freight, tariffs, everybody's feeling the pain. But I'm betting small game designers especially are wondering what the world will look like in a year's time, and is it worth betting that they will be able to manufacture and freight a game in China and do a crowdfunding campaign. Since the pandemic, we've seen major changes in the board game landscape. Isolation increased the rise of solo gaming, one reason that you're here, and the limitations of the supply chain led to an increase in print and play offerings. The question is, who's doing it right? If you're worried about low effort cash grabs in board games, print and play games make that even easier. Who's putting in the same effort they would if they had to put up money to have the game manufactured? Who's iterating and learning and putting those lessons to use? It's no surprise to me that the founder of P&P Arcade, which is, as far as I know, the biggest dedicated print and play game store, takes this stuff seriously. But even I was surprised at how this design has reached an, I have to think, near ideal state. Though looking back, it only makes sense. I'm J. Allen Riker, horror author and solo board game fanatic, and this is my review of Power Creep. Instead of jumping straight into the review, let's talk about the history of Power Creep. It has a pedigree of surprising depth, if not length. Because it was only in December 2022 that Jason Greeno ran a Kickstarter for Dungeon Pages, which set the template for the series. Hero on top, 4 levels of dungeon on bottom, rolling a mix of good and evil dice, with 56 episodes promised to be delivered on a weekly cadence throughout 2023. I didn't back Dungeon Pages, but in February, I bought the core set and I really enjoyed it. You rolled a certain number of dice depending on the level of the dungeon. You could choose them in any order, but the fewer evil dice to deal with, the better, until you built your character up with more mitigation abilities. You bought upgrades like weapons, armor, and items with XP. You built XP by making a sequential path through the dungeon from the door to the treasure, meaning each step varied by no more than one number. If the last number was a 4, you could put a 3, 4, or 5, and still be working towards your XP goal. You got XP for every defeated monster, but also every column that was fully filled with numbers, giving you something useful to do with the dice of a roll that you otherwise couldn't use. This mechanism was surprisingly satisfying, and led to push your luck moments as you delayed completing your sequential path to try to fill columns and gain extra XP. Though if you didn't roll what you needed a second time or a third time before running out of space, that could all be for naught. The game is a lot of fun. I played the 9 episodes I got multiple times, trying the mix and match aspect of adventures and dungeons. And all 56 installments were delivered, I think with no issues. Then, at the end of 2023, came the announcement. Dungeon Pages was going sci-fi. Dangerous Space isn't just a reskin. Lessons had been learned. It was time for refinement and experimentation. Maybe the simplicity of Dungeon Pages didn't hold for 56 installments. If you look at the iconography of Dangerous Space, it's almost twice the size. Far more abilities, far more items, far more combat variation. The dungeon had changed too. My thought is that the disconnected 4 dungeons felt weird. I tried to think of it as one dungeon with 4 levels, but each level had an entry door and a treasure chest, so they were really their own little dungeons. This is necessary if you're allowing the player to choose any level to be the start and any to be the finish, to be able to complete them in any order they wish. Otherwise, 3 levels could have ended in a staircase down, and 1 with a treasure. In Dangerous Space, the 4 levels were now unified by corridors into a ship. You could start where you wanted, at the difficulty level you dared, but now you had to travel between locations. The feeling of a lack of cohesiveness had been solved for. Between the areas were keycards and locked doors, hazards, and dangerous spaces. Areas felt far more alive, but also far more complicated. Hazards were poisonous gas, booby traps, decompression, and fire. Step on any of these and face a penalty. And then there's the dangerous spaces themselves. This time, the monsters had line of sight, or areas of awareness, clearly marked as dangerous spaces. Stepping into one of these while the monster, alien, robot, etc. was alive meant checking to see if it damaged you. The heroes were cool. Great art as always, and tech trees to invest you further in their growth throughout the session, and to make replays more appealing. Now, the highest value in the sequential path needed to be kept low. Feeling a time tracker was introduced as a way to lose the game. You ticked the highest number in your sequential path off of the time tracker, or 6 if the path wasn't sequential. This might not seem like a big thing, but it gave the player a good feeling about rolling low numbers. I have always disliked roll and write games where only the high numbers were useful. It's one of the reasons why One Deck Dungeon didn't click with me. Here in Dangerous Spaces, you wanted high numbers for overcoming enemy defense and low numbers to create your movement path between parts of the ship. But something was lost in the greater focus on movement throughout the environment. The placement of useless die rolls no longer mattered. You didn't push your luck to fill the area, but just kept going to make sure you didn't contaminate your sequential path between checkpoints. In theory, before playing, I probably would have said, good, it seems more streamlined. In practice, it reduced a decision that I had actually found very satisfying in dungeon pages, I think without realizing it. And I do think that maybe I'm not alone because it came back in a much more elegant fashion in Power Creep. After witnessing the flawless delivery of the promised 56 episodes of both Dungeon Pages and Dangerous Space, of course I was going to back Power Creep. Now, I hadn't played all of Dangerous Space, despite the improvements. I found it confusing to step away from and come back to because of the quantity of the iconography, and the removal of the push your luck aspect really did change things for me. But as much as Dangerous Space had evolved, I had to see what would result from the lessons learned, and was excited about the post-apocalyptic setting of Power Creep as well. Remember that while the game had only been around for 2 years, the creators had made 112 installments. The whole time, people were talking about it in the forums week after week, discussing what worked and what didn't. Though the rules remained consistent within each system, I have to think adjustments to the implementation of the rules every week were made as time passed and experience and feedback was gained. So, let's review Power Creep. What might a person not like about Power Creep? Abstraction. For some people, it's just going to be too abstract. It looks like a game of Sudoku. To me, it doesn't play anything like that, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of numbers on a gussied up grid. If you like print and play games, this is probably more on the thematic side. If you don't, this might change your mind, but it might not. And if you're a 100% Ameritrash minis gamer, then the biggest area of abstraction that deviates from the standard dungeon crawler experience for me is that you aren't necessarily anywhere in the dungeon. You don't have to place a number adjacent to the last one that you placed. You can put one anywhere off of any marked space that the rules allow. It kind of unmoors you, though I think it works better in Power Creep than any of the others. We'll come back to that. Reduced focus on combat. The focus of Power Creep is more on scavenging, extracting all the value from a location that you can. Each character doesn't have a bunch of unique weapons. Certainly no tech trees like in Dangerous Space. Honestly, it has been reduced past what I would have found ideal. I would prefer more weapons, offering different attack patterns, but I think the other improvements more than make up for this. If you want a combat focus, Dangerous Space, with its tech trees and reactive dangerous spaces that give you more of a feeling of where your character is, would probably be the one to try. What about Power Creep might people be mixed on? I can see someone saying, but I'd much rather spend a whole year in a fantasy or sci-fi environment. That's not me, but I can see it. I urge you to really compare what the games are doing, because there are many, many more impactful changes than the setting. And I think in almost every regard, Power Creep comes out ahead as the most refined version. Mix and match might be oversold. You know I love mix and match. I have multiple top 5 videos about it, including one about games that have the most mix and matchable components, the most ways to plug and play different aspects. There could be less variety gained in Power Creep by the mixing and matching than you expect. I paid $10 and will get a minimum of 56 unique plays. I am not unhappy about that value. But playing through a given map with a different character isn't going to feel radically different most of the time. The effect is less about throwing everything together, stirring it up, and seeing how it plays, like maybe with Eon's End. Rather, the effect is more that once you've played and understand the characters and the maps and the implications of the designs, then there will be some matches that have fun interactions that you might want to go back and try again. In the game going on in the background, The character tank is good with radiation, and the level is loaded with it, so it's a good pairing. But also, the enemy causes the creep track to rise, which is a measure of the increasing misery and degradation in the collapsing world. If it fills up, you lose. And Tank doesn't have any special creep mitigation, though he's going up against monsters that have special creep increase abilities. The game you were watching was the closest I came to losing by creep track. So I will definitely go back and play this map again with a character with the means to prevent creep gain. While there are 56 releases, there are repeated aspects within those releases. Characters are used in 4 maps. Those 4 maps then repeat: Eastburg, Uptown, City Center, and the Docks. Now, the interiors of the buildings change because enemies and resources are found in vastly different spots, and because from different years in the campaign, the buildings may become more derelict, showing the wear since society fell. For me, the exterior shape of the buildings repeating doesn't feel repetitive. I will encounter them too far apart, and the things found within them are what really matter. I also don't know if those 4 neighborhoods will continue repeating, or if the timeline will start over from the start of the apocalypse in another city at some point over the course of the year. We're still in early days with this year-long game. Now, I can't deny that 56 unique characters would be a lot different than 16, but the question is, can you really squeeze that much difference out of this system? Or at some point, are you just getting new character art without much effect? Crafting. Some people will love the crafting. Some people would have preferred that they keep the skill trees. Some people will love both. I like the crafting. For me, it's a better incentive to collect items than the single-use items found in Dangerous Space. Instead, you collect small parts of things that become kind of big bonuses. Your mileage may vary. What will people almost certainly like about Power Creep? The campaign. You can play a campaign using the same character through the 4 maps that they occur atop of, which all take place in the same year. You get to carry over buildings you've upgraded and their powers, but some of your good dice turn evil. I'm not really about the campaign, but it doesn't impact one-off play at all, so it's all gravy for the people for whom it works. Pushing your luck to fill the dungeon is back. In this game, instead of special skills, each character comes with a variety of blueprints. Once you clear a building and access its generator, you can turn it into a resource for your camp, like water purification facility or a guard tower. These make a big difference. I was really surprised by the power and synergy of Tank's collection of blueprints in the game that you're watching in the background. Watch through that playthrough if you want to learn more about that. Now, to power these facilities, you cross out the numbers that you put down as you were traversing the facility. So the more numbers in the building, the more times you can use its game-changing powers. In dungeon pages, the column filling just felt gamey. There was no real in-world reason for this. It was purely meta. In Dangerous Space, I felt its absence. Now it's not only back, but better, because it means that the more you explore a location, the better use you're able to put it to. Related to that, the abstract movement makes a lot more sense here. This is a crafting game. This is a resource recovery game. This is a game of survival, of reclaiming hostile places and putting them to use for humanity. Walking all around, weaving back and forth, examining everything, it makes sense here. It feels like playing a post-apocalyptic survival game and scrounging methodically through a new building for any scrap you might be able to repurpose. I don't think this was put in the game's pitch. I just felt that the movement made a lot of thematic sense. And after a couple of games, I realized why. This is what happens when the mechanisms and themes work so well in harmony, and this was a really brilliant way to do it. It's one of the things that makes me say Power Creep is the definitive version of this system, and I wonder if it can even get better. I'd certainly be willing to find out, and I'm already excited to give Battle Pages a try, their new, very different game system with weekly releases. Remember how Dangerous Spaces just about doubled the iconography of Dungeon Page? I'm thinking in an attempt to make the series worth revisiting 56 times. Power Creep halved the icons, not of Dangerous Spaces, but of the original Dungeon Pages. Dungeon Pages has 33 icons, Dangerous Space 53, Power Creep 15. Now you can save up the weekly installments for a month and not have your head in a whirl trying to recall 53 icons when you come back to it. You also don't have variations of the same tiny image to try to differentiate on your less than professional printer. Yet the game stays interesting by instead introducing significant variance in the way the enemies and blueprints and craftable items function. Instead of making you remember these things across all the games, it's all there on the page. These monsters, for example, are really clever, archetypical, post-apocalyptic enemies. You've got squatters, gnarly mutants, cultists, sewer alligators, and each of them put clever limitations on your dice placement, or at least give you repercussions for them, making each map a new puzzle. The only aspect of this that gets to me is that you can watch me in the playthrough forget the new rules introduced by the enemy multiple times. But that's just the cost of variety, especially for me. And I think it's probably not as bad when I'm not narrating. Although also, I'm typically not going back in the footage and seeing all the things that I didn't realize I messed up. Point being, they're squeezing every drop of puzzle juice out of these 15 icons. And you do need to pay attention to it. If you watch that playthrough, you'll hear me complain nonstop about how tight the quarters are. I just can't find any place to put my high numbers outside of the sequential path. It almost messes me up. Well, I hadn't looked closely at the crafting options, or I would have noticed sledgehammer. With the sledgehammer, I could have made holes in the walls that would have really relieved that tension. So while power creep isn't typically a brain burner, each environment, character, and monster needs to be approached with strategic and tactical thinking. So that's a long review for a print and play game. Power creep is what I like to see. It's not abusing the print and play format. If anything, it's simplified as it went rather than trying to get you to print out a standard board game, and yet added depth in the ways that the medium can support naturally, and a lot of value. If you have any interest in this sort of game, I don't think you can go wrong with Power Creep. What else do you want me to say? I've already said very nearly every word there is. I am really excited to see what Jason Greeno and company do to top it, because I'm sure they're trying. I'm excited for Battle Pages, and I need to buy the Cursed Menagerie and give that a try. That's it from me. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Besides not buying games, do you have any strategies for dealing with these rising prices? I'm not quite to the point of accepting that I've been entirely priced out of the hobby, personally. I am thinking of making a series-ish sort of playlist called something like Freight-Free Games or something. I think the term print and play kind of implies to a lot of people the crafting hobby aspect, which isn't what I'm interested in. Anyway, let me know what you think and if you're interested. Well, I hope to hear from you. Until then, I'm wishing you a great rest of your day and reminding you to keep playing solo.